Apple Watch on the surface, just another ovulation estimator that's out there on the market, but has the potential to be a more powerful tool. And I'm going to guess that the people at Apple don't even know this. Hi friends, Peter Uselak, the Embryo MD here. In this video, I'm going to do a check-in on the Apple Watch Series 9 that was just released. Now, about a year ago, Apple released the Series 8, and I did a video on that. And what I was proposing there was that there was kind of a hidden perk to the watch versus other ways of tracking ovulation, because you could do it over the long term, right? So the idea would be that if you were to wear the watch over many, many months, then you would get a bigger data set, and therefore you get a bigger picture on what was going on for your reproductive health. I'm going to dive into that a little bit deeper on this video so you really understand kind of the science behind it and what the advantage would be of using Apple Watch versus other trackers for looking at ovulation or your fertile window. Now, there's so many tracking methods available out there. I'm definitely not proposing that you go out and buy an Apple Watch just to see if you ovulate, because the generally accepted principles are that if you have regular menstruation, so roughly monthly, the range would typically be 21 to 35 days, then you are ovulatory. You're having ovulations every month, because ovulation is what leads to the actual menstruation. Conversely, if you don't have regular periods, it's generally accepted that you probably don't have regular ovulations. So I'm not proposing the Apple Watch is excelling at picking up what we kind of already know. What I'm going to suggest and go into deeper here is that the Apple Watch could potentially help us pick up things that aren't so obvious, and those not so obvious things can tell us something in the big picture about reproductive health. Okay, so the scientific concept is this. We've traditionally thought of a sporadic anovulation event as just a one-off. It didn't really have any big significance in the bigger picture. In other words, if you were trying to conceive for 12 months, and in one of those months you didn't ovulate sporadically, we would traditionally think that is kind of no big deal. You still had 11 months of ovulation. But what I'm going to do here is explain that actually that sporadic anovulation event could have some bearing, or it could tell us something about the other months when ovulation took place, but there was something that was maybe deficient. So everything looked good on the surface, but really underlying it, there were some hormonal problems, namely hormonal deficiencies. So let's put this in context of a typical normal menstrual cycle. Remember, everything is driven by the follicular unit. So that means that the egg is housed inside of a follicular unit, and that is making hormones that then drive the events of the menstrual cycle. And so if there's a problem with the menstrual cycle, we often will point it all the way back to that unit, which includes the egg and includes the egg quality. Okay, so the current data is suggesting that if there is an anovulatory event sporadically, so let's just say again, one in a year, that during other months, those other 11 months, there may be some deficiencies in the hormones produced. So despite ovulation taking place, menstruation taking place, everything going according to expectations, that in the blood, there's some deficient levels of hormones. Let me give you some examples. The egg unit, the follicular unit, is responsible for making estrogen in the beginning of the menstrual cycle. That could be lower. After ovulation, after the egg comes out, that same unit is responsible for making progesterone. That could be lower. And the same thing with what tells that egg to come out, which is known as the LH surge. That could be lower, all on what look like, what appear to be normal menstrual cycles. So any tracking system that would help you to acquire more months of data might be able to pick up one of those sporadic anovulatory events, and therefore clue us in that there's something going on more globally on the months that are appearing to be normal. Okay, so what I'm suggesting is, because Apple has a temperature sensing device, that in theory you wouldn't really have to do much to run. You just have to commit to wearing this at night. Set it and forget it. If it fits in with your sleep that you wear this at night, then you can do that, and you're willing to wear it for the long term. because it's not going to have any superiority over other tracking devices if you're going to not wear it long term. So some of the other ones that are very popular would be entering data manually on an app and then having that app kind of extrapolate out predictions based on that. Some modalities that will give you a little bit more confidence would be things where you're entering biological input into the process. So in other words, urine, we'd have urine predictor kits. We're able to detect not only the traditional surge in the middle, which has been the most common one, but now we can also detect the estrogen rise, which is happening in that first half of the cycle. And more recently, we can detect in the urine progesterone metabolites, and those would indicate that progesterone rose, which again is directly linked to the ovulatory event. So we have a lot of tools out there that we can use to simply verify ovulation. And again, the simplest way would just be to take a menstrual history. But what I'm proposing here is that a device like this Apple would have superiority because you're able to potentially use it for a longer amount of time and then acquire larger data sets. Tracking systems like doing urine sticks, they're quite laborious. And so you want to make something that's easy for yourself over the long term. Now, a few comments. I'm not proposing that everybody go out and buy an Apple Watch. They're quite expensive. I think the less expensive model comes in at about $400. But if it fits in with other things, like say you want to buy a watch for something else, I think it's a good system. Long-term potential cost savings. Now, there's other trackers on the market that use similar biological input, like temperature with the addition of monitoring the heart rate, and then gives you a read on ovulation happening or not. But those are standalone devices, which I think are approaching the $300 range. So, for another $100, you get so much more with the watch. And again, I'm not endorsing Apple Watch. I'm just saying that this may be a good match for certain individuals because it has all the elements that would satisfy this looking for a subtle abnormality. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing I'm going to point out is menstrual abnormalities that are subtle and undetected are going to become much more important if we're older. So this device might be a good match for an individual, say 35 years or older. Time is of the essence just in general. This is irregardless of ovulatory status. And so if we could detect something abnormal in the hormones earlier, that's going to be a bigger payoff versus a younger woman who has a little bit more runway on her reproductive lifespan. So Apple Watch on the surface, just another ovulation estimator that's out there on the market, but has the potential to be a more powerful tool to look for subtle abnormalities that occur over long periods of time. So I hope you found that useful, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up on this video, and please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Embryo MD.